Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Soon as we get a kartalis and my madanga back. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone. So nice to see you. Yeah, it's a great opportunity that we have in the human life to take time for spiritual development. Taking time for spiritual development is so important that the Vedas actually say we have no other business. There's no other important business. All other things mean that we're maintaining the status quo. And therefore the time that we have for especially hearing and chanting is vital. Vital for what? Vital for feeling satisfaction. Because there's a cage and there's a bird in the cage. And the Atma is the bird. And the body is the cage. And normally, without thinking too much or planning too much for my spiritual advancement, I will polish the cage, both physically, mentally. The mental cage is also there, but I don't feed the bird. So he gets hungry, and he can even die. Those verses in the Shastra that say that the soul is killed means he becomes so much neglected, and one forgets to engage in any kind of spiritual pursuit that one practically forgets about the soul altogether and becomes wholly absorbed in material pursuits and develops deep anxiety. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Did you mark these for me? Is that what these are? How thoughtful of you. Now, a little earlier in the week or 2 weeks ago, we were reading a section from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita about Sri Advaita Acharya. And in those readings, we came upon a purport in which Srila Prabhupada listed five purports in which he said one can investigate further, because each of these 5 purports of verses talked about the impetus for selfless service. Do you have the original verse from Advaita Acharya where these are listed? Okay, it's easy to search because all you have to do is look for the first reference, and then it'll take you to the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, and then you can look up the purport. And how is everybody tonight? Okay? Good? All right. So, the first verse and purport is in the 3rd canto, 4th chapter, 15th verse. 3, 4, 15. And in this chapter, we're getting an insider's view of a conversation that took place between the great sage Maitreya and the pure devotee Vidura. And Vidura had first approached Uddhava and asked, "Will you be my spiritual master? Please guide me." Even though he was Vidura, a pure devotee unto himself, still, because the science of self-realization is so subtle that even a person like that requires guidance from a spiritual master, Uddhava told him that there's an older sage nearby named Maitreya, who also recently heard directly from Krishna, and out of etiquette he deferred to him. This is called Maryada Vyatikrama. If there is a more qualified person and someone is approached for guidance, the etiquette is to defer to the more senior person, the more advanced and senior person. Otherwise, one can overstep the etiquette called Maryada Vyatikrama and make an offense. So Uddhava deferred to Maitreya, even though Uddhava was the topmost of all devotees. The other reason was Krishna had given him an instruction to go to Badarikashram and there reveal the great secrets of pure devotional service. So Vidura then went and met Maitreya. And they sat down, and Vidura inquired from Maitreya about many things. And we get to hear what the conversation was. That's the beauty of the revealed scripture. Those of you who have joined us online, we welcome you. We invite you to text in at 650-245-7018. That's 650-245-7018. And be a part of the class. You can also call in by a conference call. The number should be on your screen. It's on the screen, right? The number for the conference call? On the temple website, which is ISKCON.SiliconValley.com. You'll see a number there. You can actually speak to us through this speaker system that we have. We'll hear you no matter where you are. And we're also looking into ways that we can see you. For instance, we may put a big screen in this temple room and then have Google Hangout, where the first 10 people can be seen online who join us through Google Hangout. And then we'll be able to see the audience who's watching online as well. So we're innovating because we have Ramananda Saka and his team working day and night, actually. They take little rests during the day for 10, 15 minutes, but other than that, they're working 24 hours a day on trying to bring you clearer broadcasts, high-definition broadcasts. They're innovating in so many ways in order that we can all be connected and go on hearing the transcendental sound vibration. So please text in at 650-245-7018. Our operators are standing by to take your call. We already have one text, and who was that?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Shyamlangi Mataji, and she's going to attend the class online, so she's offering you her humble obeisances. And along the lines of what you were talking about broadcast, her comment is that the broadcast today is very, very clear, and she can see each flower on your garland very, very clearly on the broadcast.
This is the high definition. Huh?
Yeah. And then Avantika is also saying Haribol to you.
Thank you very much, Shyamlangi. It's so nice to have you online with us today. And we just, Vrindavan just walked in the room. Vrindavan, come on up here for a few minutes. I know you can't stay for that long. We'd like to see you. How was your day? Here, sit right there. Did you have a good day? Yeah. Good, we're glad you're here. It's nice to see you. Hare Krishna Vishaka Lila. Okay. What we're working from today, we're following up on what we heard from a purport we read online, that is during a conference call when we were reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this is from the Adi Lila, chapter 6, and the verse is number 42. And I'm going to the very last section of that purport, in which Prabhupada quotes a verse, and this is the translation: "My Lord, I do not worship you to be liberated from this material entanglement, nor do I wish to save myself from the hellish condition of material existence. Nor do I ever pray for a beautiful wife to enjoy in a nice garden. I wish only that I may always be in full ecstasy in the pleasure of serving your Lordship. And that's from the Mukundamala Stotra, number 4. In Srimad Bhagavatam also, there are many instances in the 3rd and 4th cantos in which devotees pray to the Lord simply to be engaged in His service and nothing else. And they are listed thereafter. And so what we're doing is, because Prabhupada took the trouble to list them parenthetically, we're going to go back and read each verse with its purport, and then we'll discuss what are the benefits of rendering selfless service. Who could say, just right from the very top of the conversation, what a benefit of selfless service is? Not necessarily theoretically, but maybe from your practical experience of performing selfless service in some circumstance, what was the benefit that you derived? Well, we'll just give a microphone to Vishaka Leela.
Transformation of heart.
What do you mean by that?
Developing good qualities like, humility, gratitude, all that it's all there in the surface, it just comes up.
That still sounds a little theoretical. Do you remember an instance in which you felt a transformation of heart when you were rendering service? We want to hear the exact second in time that you felt it. Where you were, what, was the sun shining? Who was in the room? What did you hear? What did you feel? What was your revelation?
Not exactly my experience, but when I was talking to a devotee, one of my friends, she had this opportunity to serve her spiritual master. Usually, she said her attitude is to always be in the front and, just be there. But for an instant, she took a back seat and she wanted to serve the spiritual master in a way that, so that all her God brothers and God sisters could get direct association. So she was at the back serving in the background, and she felt, that day she felt so satisfied. And, she felt that there was so much humility that she felt, and she could appreciate her spiritual master, and also she could see how she was so satisfied serving not only the spiritual master but also his disciples, through that selfless service. So when I was thinking about it, I thought, yes, because when there is a selfless service that is offered, then automatically there is a transformation of heart, there is a revelation, and Krishna opens up the opportunity to go deep and understand.
That's very compelling. That sounds like a good idea. So if I understood you correctly, you said you had talked to a God sister, colleague?
God sister.
God sister who said that she had an experience where she stayed in the background and she served the servants. She was the servant of the servant and wasn't looking for any credit or anything like that.
Yeah, usually that's the mode, to be in the front and get the credit.
And get noticed for your service.
Yes.
So in this case, she was staying back, and then she said she felt satisfaction come into her heart from doing that.
Yes. Once I tried that too, and even though it was not so deep, I still felt that, I felt that humility come up. I felt more satisfied than being otherwise.
I think we're onto something here. This is very practical. Jagrini and then Ramananda Saka.
Well, I know from personal experience over and over and over and over and over again that I feel when I do service, devotional service, very happy. It immediately uplifts my mood, and young, energized. And I don't think I've ever done selfless service, so I can only imagine what must happen if you get to that point.
Wow. So you said over and over and over again you felt that by engaging in what the best you could muster for self-service, you felt satisfaction and you also felt energetic and young. That's a nice benefit. Ramananda Saka. You can keep that microphone back there. We have plenty up here. We have dozens of microphones. Keep that one for the back quadrant.
By selfless service, I mean by selfless service in connection with Krishna, that gives the knowledge, the true knowledge, the practical knowledge.
Can you prove that?
This verse is somewhat related. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam. By hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service to a pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead is established as an irrevocable fact.
Where is that verse?
This is from Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't know the...
First canto?
Yeah, Divinity and Divine.
Second chapter?
Okay.
19th verse. Well done, Ramananda Saka. Good points. Excellent. And we'd like to acknowledge that the Google team has just come in. And Govinda Charan Prabhu, yes. What a team that is, too. High-powered team. They're over at Google regularly meeting people there. Some of the cream of the crop across the world are there as employees, and a really creative environment at Google. So they're very open to new things, new ideas. Every room is created with the idea of coming up with great ideas. And one of their founding members, I think, wrote a book called, what's it called?
Search inside yourself.
Search Inside Yourself. I just had a look at it, and it has a lot of principles that come from the Bhagavad Gita and such. So welcome to the Google team. Hare
Actually,
Krishna.
Prabhu just joined the team. We just had the first program where Prabhu started the next batch of the Bhagavad Gita introductory course. We are just coming back from that, and you can see the bliss because we are in Prabhu's association for like an hour. And all the people were so satisfied and happy, and they're all looking forward for the next week.
Hare Krishna. And yes, Shraddha. Selfless service. What does it mean? What is your experience?
I was also thinking that when you're doing selfless service as compared to when you're trying to serve yourself, you have a higher level and a bad type of anxiety when you're doing things for yourself as compared to when you're doing for others. And like, when I'm serving others or making something or doing something, there's a big, nice anticipation, and I guess that's where the happiness is coming, that you're just waiting to see the nice expression on the person's face for whom you're doing things. You can get into anxiety over there as well, but it's of a different, it's a different type.
What about, well done, well put, what about if you do some service and you're not even anticipating that they're going to find out that you did it? What if you did something for somebody and you remained anonymous? How would that feel?
That feels very good for a very long time, actually. As long as the secret is not out, you keep on feeling good
That
about
doesn't
that.
seem right, though. Shouldn't we be acknowledged for everything we do? And isn't that where the real satisfaction comes, when people actually acknowledge that we did it? Isn't that where the real satisfaction comes?
No.
Then where does it come from?
I think it just comes from the act of doing it.
Just from the act
Selfless.
itself?
Act itself, yeah.
Any other theories? Where does satisfaction come from when one renders anonymous, selfless service?
Intention from...
Hansa Priya from the Google team just came running in here. Okay, Vishakalila, have the microphone in hand. Give one quick from the back quadrant. No, keep it, Vishakalila. Somebody else give Hansa Priya a microphone. You're in the mid quadrant.
I just
There is
wanted
such a
to,
thing.
I wanted to say that personally, no matter how much praise you get from other people, but it doesn't really mean anything until you feel it from inside. So it's like internally, if your ground that you stand on is secure, then even if you get the praise or doesn't get the praise, it doesn't mean anything. But if I'm not really contained within of the selfless love that we give, then no matter how much I do, I don't feel great about it.
Well, if it's coming from within, where does it come from?
It's
From Krishna.
Krishna guiding.
Can you
within.
prove that?
Yes, Prabhu. Actually,
He can prove it. Hold on, everybody.
I
Okay,
mean,
go ahead.
Actually, you can
Good work,
question-
Hansa Priya.
we can perceive like two different types of happiness. One is when we were like looking for acknowledgement and get that, that's looks like external. But when Guru or Vaishnavas or Krishna is pleased, we can feel that, I don't know how to, yeah, we can, that's a proof, like we can feel that it's a different quality of happiness and it's very satisfying. The level of satisfaction you get is really internal versus just being external acknowledgement and recognition out of it.
What if you did some service for your spiritual master and then somebody else took the credit? What would you do?
If so you really you did that part and he's pleased with that, that is enough for you, because you are not dependent on any.
You're not dependent on anything, including the juncture, the point at which you think, I got credit, I was recognized for doing this.
Right.
Have you ever experienced that? Hansapuri came running back in, so this is good.
No, I just remembered that Srila Prabhupada, when he said, I'm just the peon, and he gives the credit back to his guru, and that's when actually the real containment is there, because then you give it back. If you hold on to it, the pride, the envy, the greed, it just gets into the worst, nasty place to be.
So is it possible to do devotional service and hold on to things and not feel satisfied afterwards?
Well, yes, if you just keep the credit to yourself.
I
and
see.
not giving back to the person who has really is the.
So this is a nice thread. That means it's possible if you don't take any credit, somebody else takes credit, and then Hansapriya moved it up a notch. She said, actually, you just pass the credit on. And that's when you do that, then you're free from the false ego that might ensue when you try to take credit for it, and it might actually give you more anxiety, right? The downward pull. That's nice. And we have a text that came in, and then Vishaka Leela.
So this is from Pratibha Mataji.
Pratibha in Sacramento. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Selfless service for Krishna gives satisfaction because you get a feeling that Krishna is watching, even if it's anonymous.
So even behind closed doors, you do the service, and you can experience for yourself that Krishna is acknowledging, Krishna is reciprocating from within. Mukharven, and then, go ahead, Vishakalila, and then Mukharven.
The same point, Prabhu, I wanted to say that if that's what our intention is to please Krishna, and we do it sincerely, we know that Krishna will be pleased. So we would not automatically expect that acknowledgement in an external, through external means. I'm able to remember this pastime of Narottam Das Thakur and Lokanath Goswami, where he goes and approaches him for Diksha, but initially he doesn't give, and then Narottam Das Thakur goes every day in the morning to clean up the place where he takes his bath and all that, and it goes unnoticed. And Lokanath Swami, every day in the morning when he comes, he thinks, who cleans up this place? So one day he decides to watch from behind as to who is doing it. And when he notices that Narottam Das Thakur is the one who is actually doing it for so many days without anybody knowing, his heart melts, and then he comes and he appreciates him, and then he offers him Diksha. And I was thinking when I was hearing that pastime that what really impels or compels somebody to do a service, even when they are not acknowledged or nobody knows that they are doing it, is because their intention is so clear that they only want to please that particular personality, not get the credit for it.
Nice point. Good mining. You're mining it deeper, deeper. Very good. Mukharven.
Guru Maharaj, there can be many points, I think, but like you told from your personal experience, so I feel that selfless service brings you happiness, that you feel yourself. And I remember when I came first time ISV, it was 2011, Janmashtami of 2011, and I came around 4 o'clock morning, and it became next day morning of 4 o'clock. And when next day around 3 o'clock to when we wrap up everything, it was more than 24 hours, but that happiness was there within that, at 3 o'clock night of next day I can never feel that any time that happiness I that had. after 24 hours. And also selfless service, I found that we are ready to accept criticism. You don't feel that, you don't associate, but you are ready to take criticism and ready to improve yourself. But if you associate, if you're thinking that service is, and if you are attaching any other motive, then you don't take criticism, or you don't take the positive criticism, constructive criticism in the right sense. And also you like to do more service and more service. And this I felt when during especially yatra, whenever organizing yatra in Mayapur Dham, I feel that you feel that doing more service and service, and if suppose some people are complaining, you don't get affected because you are taking the right spirit and right and
Nice points, and very specific also. That helps. Thank you, Makarvin.
I just wanted to, on the way driving over here, I was talking to somebody up in Denver. And so that person, so I'll just narrate 2 experiences from that conversation, is that person was sick of his office where he was working, and he was looking for a job outside. And so he was asking me, like, can I get a job in Oracle? Do you know recruiters and all that? And I don't, I don't dabble in that. So I was just telling him, go to LinkedIn and, put your resume there. So it was going back and forth, like, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but. So, and every time I would give her a solution, it was like, you're not interested. It was very much depressed. And then later on I said, you're up there. He was up there alone and all that. And so then I said, the best way to get out of it is to do some service. And then we started talking about service options and things like that. And his mood changed completely. And towards the end, he was like, I want to hang up the phone because I want to make sure that my internet is working. And I want to make sure this, and I want to make sure that. And I was just amazed that, when it came to service, he was so much excited. But when I was telling him things for his own good, like you go and put your resume there, he was coming with, yes, but kind of a thing. So it was just the thought that he's now able to do service.
That was tangible. You could see how by changing the focus to selfless service, then immediately the mood changes. Really nice point. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a section in which, in the 10th canto, Krishna tells the gopis that you'll have to be satisfied with your own service because it's so selfless that I can't reciprocate it anymore. And this is mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna has given a promise for all time. Ye yata mam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanavartante manusya partha sarvashaha. That as one surrenders to me, I reward him accordingly. But they were so surrendered, so selfless, with no consideration for themselves. Krishna says, I can't reciprocate this. And therefore he said, you have to be satisfied with your own selfless service. So there's a way in which selfless service is the main focus of the devotees. The more they can push their false ego out of the way and simply do the service for service. Prahlad Maharaj, after Hiranyakashipu had been killed by Lord Nrsingadev, the Lord asked him to take some benediction. That is Prahlad. And Prahlad said, I'm not a vanik. I'm not doing service to get anything in return, so please, nothing. Just my service is my reward. I'm only doing service for service. Lord Nrsingadev had to insist several times. I'm Bhagavan, you're my servant, you take. You take something, some benediction. Then he said, the benediction, please liberate my father. He said, that's already done. So then Prahlad said, if you want to give me any worthy benediction, then please make my service more and more selfless. That within the core of my heart, there's no material desire at all. That's the only reward I ask. So we heard in this section, we're reading in the section about Advaita Acharya, about how the devotees are all looking to become servants. It's the highest position. In fact, Krishna himself wants to become his own servant. So he comes as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to experience that selfless service. And the emblem of the selfless service, which is shown in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is that of the gopis. And then the highest is Srimati Radharani. And this selfless service is all emulated and considered to be the pinnacle of devotional service by all Vaishnavas. That method. Arajo Bhagavan Rajesha Taniyas Tadama Vrindavana Ramya Kachirupasana Vrajavidu Vargena Valkalpita. It is held in the Vaishnav Manjusha that the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that there's no other service which is considered higher than that of the young gopis of Vrindavan who selflessly served Krishna. So we found it. We found the secret to feeling happy, and that is to render selfless service. And that's in the realm of possibility. Anyone can practice doing that. Service, which is service for service. Don't take any credit. Just do it because it's because it's pleasing to the Lord and His devotees, and then see what happens. And now we're going to hear some purports specifically about this topic. And the first one that we'll hear is from, as I was saying earlier, the 3rd canto, 4th chapter. Any more texts? Okay. Konyishate parasaroja bhajam sudurlaborte heshu chaturshvapiha tatapi naham pravrinomi bhuman bhavat padamboja nisheva notsuka. O my Lord, devotees who engage in the transcendental loving service of your lotus feet have no difficulty in achieving anything within the realm of the 4 principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But, O Great One, as far as I'm concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. Purport. Those who are associated with the Lord in the Vaikuntha planets achieve all the bodily features of the Lord and appear to be the same as Lord Vishnu. Such liberation is called Sarupya Mukti, which is one of the 5 kinds of liberation. The devotees engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord never accept Sayuja Mukti, or merging in the rays of the Lord, called Brahmajyoti. The devotees can achieve not only liberation, but any success in the realm of religiosity, economic development, or sense gratification up to the standard of the demigods in the heavenly planets. But such a pure devotee as Uddhava refuses to accept all such facilities. A pure devotee wants simply to engage in the service of the Lord and does not consider his own personal benefit. You want to hear the verse again? Yes. O my Lord, devotees who engage in the transcendental loving service of your lotus feet have no difficulty in achieving anything within the realm of the 4 principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But, O Great One, as far as I'm concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. Everything's available to the devotee, in other words. But even though it's all available, the devotees aren't interested. They know, because they're so satisfied by their selfless service that they have no compulsion for getting anything else. They simply want to increase their service and be more engaged in selfless service and to make it more pure.
I was just thinking, Bilva Mangal Thakur also said that liberation stands outside with folded hands.
Mukti swayam mukhali tanjali sevate asman. Kanka. There's a microphone in the back. Keep that one in the middle. Keep, Jagrini, yeah. There, keep that one for the back and then one for the middle.
This verse reminds me of Srila Prabhupada, because when he came to the United States, he came on the order of his guru, even though he had never left India, and he had no idea actually how he was going to come, and there were so many difficulties. But he gained so much wealth, properties, disciples, but he didn't ever take that for himself, and he only wanted to serve his guru and Krishna. And as soon as you read this, it reminded me of Srila Prabhupada.
Very sweet point. Thank you very much, Kanka. Yes, go ahead, Vishaka.
That is a question from Sundari Leela Mataji.
Okay, we're getting texts coming in from every direction.
Yeah. She's asking, healthy relationships and transparency foster selfless service attitude. Is it true, or am I missing something very important?
Healthy relationships and transparency foster
Selfless
service. Is she missing something? Transparency and communication?
Healthy
And healthy
relationships.
relationships foster selfless service. Well, yeah, transparency is helpful. In one sense, there are probably various angles of vision, but when we feel ourselves transparent to Krishna, then we realize that there's no need to aggrandize our own activities because Krishna's naturally watching us. This is Krishna consciousness means to understand, become conscious of Krishna, and becoming conscious of Krishna means understanding that he's conscious of me and everything else. There's a verse in Gajendra Mokshana, which says that, my Lord, you're never lazy about looking out for me. You're always observing me in all circumstances, and this is transparency and communication. Oh no, healthy relationship. Healthy relationship. Yeah, that could also help in the sense that when there's love and trust, which are the foundations of a healthy relationship, there's a way in which one wants to do a selfless service for another. Nice points, thank you. So,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
yes, please go ahead. And who's speaking? Huh? Oh, it's Malini. Hare Krishna, Malini, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances, all Krishna Prabhupada. Prabhuji, I wanted to make a point about selfless service. From my point of view, I feel selfless service is to perform service without any hidden agenda. You're doing it to please your spiritual master and the higher authorities. And more often than not, if you try to be in that mood, I have not reached a stage where I'm selfless yet, but at least if you are trying to do service in the mode of selflessness, then Krishna actually reciprocates from within. And there were so many instances where we could feel some kind of a reciprocation from Krishna when you're actually trying to do something just for him. So that when Krishna reciprocates, that gives so much of faith and satisfaction that you are actually doing something for Krishna.
Can we get you to reveal one of those instances in which you tried to render selfless service and you felt reciprocation? If it's private or something like that, you don't have to, but if we're all doing it, so.
Prabhuji, in Sankirtan, we find it almost every time when we go on book distribution. There are so many instances where we feel reciprocation. For example, I could just remember, like for the recent MSF, when we went out for book distribution, our goal was to reach 25 CC sets, and we had no other agenda except to please Lord Chaitanya by distributing those sets. And when we went there, and devotees were distributing books, and initially we did not achieve any success in distributing Chaitanya Charitamritas, and then many devotees left because it was already late. But I was thinking that if I leave also, then how will we meet the goal? And then myself and a couple of devotees stayed back. Then immediately 3 Chaitanya Charitamritas were distributed.
That's nice.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
This was just one example, Prabhuji, and there was and I also felt another time when somebody suggested a place to go for book distribution, and then I wanted to go somewhere else, but just to please the other devotee, I just thought like I don't want to put anything for myself, and I just want to follow what the other devotee says. And I went for book distribution in that place. And I saw that Krishna reciprocated because I did not put my needs in front. And we did so many books that day, and something like that, Prabhuji.
Nice. Very specific. You get a lot of instant feedback when you're engaged in some kind of service. And you can see for yourself, if you if you endeavor to do extra, to do it in a selfless way, then Krishna reciprocates. Yes, Gandharvika. Nice points, Malini. Really enriched the whole conversation. Thank you.
No, that's what Malini said is the forefront of her, but I just want to add more to what she does.
Yeah.
It's like when one becomes selfless, the potential to do service also expands. And even ordinary people become extraordinary simply because they have that attitude. Because I was just telling one day, Malini, I don't know when I can come to book distribution, because every weekend I have like 3 laundries to put and my house to clean and everything. But she was saying, I thought like maybe she has somebody else come and do it or something. She was saying that she has to finish everything before going on book distribution, the whole Saturday. And then the next day, morning there is Sankirtan call on Sunday. And then they have evening program in Cupertino. But then in the evening I see that she was sitting in the book room and chanting like so focused. And I was thinking, yeah, this is where she gets the strength from. Unless we have the selfless attitude in our service, it's very difficult to chant with that attraction to Krishna and dependency on Krishna. So, I think Malini is much more than what she just said, and I'm grateful to be in that association.
It shows. I mean, it's really interesting. I love your point about how when you just decide you're going to do selfless service, then your capacity to serve increases also. And I think that because living entities are so subtle, they actually begin to notice selfless service. If you decide sincerely, I'm doing this service for service, I'm not trying to impress anyone or do it for any result, then you become attractive, actually, to everyone else. You're not doing it to become attractive, you just do become attractive. People begin to notice you, and they, like a couple instances. Just recently, I was talking to Keshav Bharti Maharaj, who was in Hong Kong for the Gaur Purnima, and he was, I said, so how was it? Tell me everything. And he started telling me details, and he was saying, yeah, there's this one devotee there, this Mataji, she wears the same sari, she's been wearing the same sari for the last 20 years. And the same thing, and she never, and she's cooked every Raj Bhog offering for the last 20 years, never missed, and she's always serving the devotees, and she's so blissful. She's like, the center of the temple. Immediately he thought of her, and said that. And I remember how Jayananda Prabhu was famous for his selfless service. In fact, when Prabhupada came to San Francisco in 1974, and I could sense that there was a hierarchy, a pecking order, of who could be close to Prabhupada. And then when he came up into his room and things like that, some people could be close and some people couldn't. And Jayananda wasn't even there, but everyone sat down, everyone had pushed in to get as close to Prabhupada as they could, to get the most, proximity to him. And then Prabhupada looked around and said, where's Jayananda? He was thinking about Jayananda. Everyone knew he was doing selfless service. And so that's the first place his mind went. And this is the secret of devotional service. Of course, there's the story in the Chaitanya Bhagavat about Duki, who's in the background. She's the maidservant. No one, with notoriety in the circle of Srivas Pandit. And many servants, and they just serve, they do their service. But she was doing it so selflessly, with such expertise, that it caught Lord Chaitanya's attention, even though she was the back. She was filling up pots with Ganga water and bringing them. And it's not written in great detail, but the implication was that she was doing it very thoughtfully. And Mahaprabhu, noticed her, picked her out of the whole crowd of all the devotees and said, "Who is that?" Said, "Oh, that's Dukhi." Said, "Now her name is Sukhi." And he personally gave her a name and noticed that this is selfless service. So that's the only thing that's really valuable, is when the service is selfless. Then otherwise it gets contaminated and it's not so attractive. It's not something that you can offer to Krishna that he'll really appreciate. When it's pure and you don't want anything in return, service for service, then Krishna takes it with great relish. Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati taraham bhakti paritam ashnami pariyatatmanaha. With love and devotion, if someone offers something, Krishna said, "I'll take it. I'll take that thing." I also remember Prabhupada was talking about chastity. This is slightly different, but it has a bridge to what we're talking about. And he said once he and one of his colleagues were having a discussion in a room, and the maid who cleans the rooms came to sweep. And she was so shy and sort of unassuming and chaste that she wouldn't come in the room and disturb them, but sort of stood outside. And then they noticed her, and she didn't have to say anything. But by the power of her, that very subtle, energy that she was not trying not to disturb them and being chaste and everything like that, they got up, they stopped their meeting and they went out. So she could come in and clean the room. And Prabhupada was indicating that this is the power of chastity. And so there's, from these subtle practices, there's great energy that gets projected outwardly that everyone notices, and certainly Krishna notices. And this is the next one? Thank you. Fantastic. Did you find it? Okay. Is this it? You asked Srivas Pandit Prabhu? If all else fails, ask Srivas Pandit Prabhu. Okay. Since an animal such as I, Madrik Prapana Pashupasha Vimokshanai, Madrik Prapana Pashupasha Vimokshanaya, Muktaya Bhuri Karunaya Namo Layaya, Shankshena Sarvatanu Brinmanasi Pratita, Pratyagdrishe Bhagavate Brihate Namaste. We'd like to welcome Dayanidhi Prabhu, who just came in a few minutes ago. Hare Krishna, Dayanidhi Prabhu, good to see you. Translation: since an animal acts such an animal such as I has surrendered unto you, who are supremely liberated, certainly you will release me from this dangerous position. Indeed, being extremely merciful, you incessantly try to deliver me. By your partial feature as Paramatma, you are situated in the hearts of all embodied beings. You are celebrated as direct transcendental knowledge, and you are unlimited. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport: the words Brihate Namaste have been explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Brihate Krishna Krishnaya, Shri Krishnaya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is? The Supreme Personality of Godhead is? Correct. There are many tattvas, such as Vishnu tattva, Jiva tattva, and Shakti tattvas, but above everything is the Vishnu tattva, which is all-pervading. This all-pervading feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 10:42, wherein the Lord says, Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tavarjuna vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekam shenas tito jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. Thus, Krishna says that the entire material world is maintained by his partial representation as Paramatma. The Lord enters every universe as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, and then expands himself as Kshirodakshayi Vishnu to enter the hearts of all living entities and even enter the atoms. Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. Every universe is full of atoms, and the Lord is not only within the universe but also within the atoms. Thus, within every atom, the Supreme Lord exists in his Vishnu feature as Paramatma, but all the Vishnu tattvas emanate from Krishna, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10.2, Aham Adirti Devanam. Krishna is the Adi or beginning of the Devas of this material world, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar. Therefore, he is described as Bhagavate Brihate. Everyone is Bhagavan, everyone possesses opulence, but Krishna is Brihan Bhagavan, the possessor of unlimited opulence. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Krishna is the origin of everyone. Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, even Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar come from Krishna. Matak Paratanam Nanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya. There is no personality superior to Krishna, therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Bhagavate Brihate means unto Krishna. You sure it's in here, right? I don't see it. This isn't it. Yeah, it is in here, sorry. In this material world, everyone is a pashu, an animal, because of the bodily conception of life. Yasya mabudhi konapetri dhatuke swadhi kalatradishu bhauma ijadi yatirta buddhi salile nakarichij janeshu abhikeshu saeva gokaraha. A human being who identifies the body made of three elements as the self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of his birth to be worshipable, and who goes to a place of pilgrimage simply to bathe rather than to meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like a cow or an ass. Practically everyone, therefore, is a pashu, an animal, and everyone is attacked by the crocodile of material existence. Not only the king of the elephants, but every one of us is being attacked by the crocodile and is suffering the consequences. Only Krishna can deliver us from this material existence. Indeed, he is always trying to deliver us. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridershe arjuna tishtati. He is within our hearts and is not at all inattentive. This is the point I was coming to. He is within our hearts and is not at all inattentive. His only aim is to deliver us from material life. It is not that he becomes attentive to us only when we offer prayers to him. Even before we offer our prayers, he incessantly tries to deliver us. He is never lazy in regard to our deliverance. Therefore, the verse says, Buddhi Karunaya Namo Layaya. It is the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord that he always tries to bring us back home, back to Godhead. God is liberated and he tries to make us liberated. But although he is constantly trying, we refuse to accept his instructions. Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. Nonetheless, he has not become angry. Therefore, he is described here as Buddhi Karunaya, unlimitedly merciful in delivering us from this miserable material condition of life and taking us back home, back to Godhead. Never inattentive. This I'm entering into evidence because knowledge of this, awareness of the fact that Krishna is attentive to all our needs, material, spiritual, psychological, social, would tend to make us simply selflessly serve him and not try to cater to the other kinds of service that call to us in this world. What do you think of the theory? Are you buying it?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Yes, Gandharvika.
Prabhuji, not related to this, but at the beginning of the class you talked about Maryada Vyatikrama. So one, I hope I can explain this nicely. One question is, sometimes in an organization, we may be in the temple or in some kind of a program from the beginning with the advanced devotees, and we see the congregation or the temple growing. But sometimes what happens is we consider that the advanced devotees at our level, and sometimes if they say, then we can't take it. Or even if we say yes in front of them, but then we have our own opinions and we try to express it explicitly. At that time, it really is bewildering for someone who sees it. A third person could see that the advanced devotee is so great, but though the other devotee is at a very lower level, but still they think that they are at that advanced devotee's level and they do some gestures or some talking which will demean the advanced devotee, but which puts the third person's faith and down and fearful, like if I go close, will I also become like that? So how can one avoid it, even in the service, like always be respectful and obedient to elders?
You have to become a Madhyama Adhikari, because Madhyama Adhikaris see four entities. They see the Supreme Lord and they give their love. They see the innocent and they pour in their mercy as much as possible. They see the devotee and they make appropriate friendships with the devotees and relationships. Appropriate means there's ways to interact with devotees who are less advanced, same advancement and more advanced. And then the person avoids the envious. Ishvare taradineshu bali sheshu dvisatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha ya karoti samadhyama. That's the definition of a madhyama adhikari. Then the definition of a kanishta adhikari is acharya meva hariye pujam yasharayete natad bhakteshu cha anyeshu sabhakta prakrita smitaha. The exact definition of a prakrita bhakta is one who sees Krishna in the temple, but then can't see the devotees. He doesn't know how to estimate what is a devotee. What is an advanced devotee, what is a non-advanced devotee. So he doesn't know how to respect devotees, doesn't know how to serve devotees. And then finally, he also doesn't know how to respect other living entities or to do good for them, because he doesn't recognize them at all. So it's the ability to sort these things out as they're happening in a social situation is a product of one's realization, one's adhikari, and that comes as a gradual result of advancement. And you might find that somebody who's sincere that comes into an assembly of devotees may not be able to sort out how these relationships are working between various devotees, but as they become more advanced, then they recognize, oh, this person's advanced, this person's in this position, that person's in that position, and then they act accordingly. And that's a sign that they're coming up, that they know how to interact properly. Krishneti yasya giritam marasadriyeta dikshasti chet prantibishcha bashantamisham shushushaya bhajana vignam ananyamanya nindari shunya hridamipsita sangalabhya. Rupa Goswami gives this advice, that one should, in one's mind, offer obeisances to anyone who can say Hare Krishna, and should offer bodily obeisances to one who is initiated and practicing devotional service, and should faithfully serve and give one's life to somebody who's come to the topmost position of devotional service, and should inquire from such a person, render service, and so forth. So the ability to distinguish is very important. Did that help?
Yes, Prabhuji, because why would one think the advanced devotees to be at one's level and argue or counter-argue or feel like, because if my peers, like, let she do it or something, I can tell in an offensive manner. Because Mahaprabhu is so gentle and very subtle that he didn't even give love of Godhead to Sachimata because she just said one word.
Mm-hmm.
But we often see that devotees just pass comments on advanced devotees. Oh, he's like that, but not knowing like how great they are. How does...
Well, one who's advanced in devotional service, as Krishna describes in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita about Astita Pragya. Arjuna wants to know, how does he speak? And the person who's advanced in devotional service, this is the main way that you can judge who's advanced, what comes out of their mouth. So someone who lets things slip or says, in a room full of advanced devotees, as soon as someone talks, and just the way they phrase things, and just the way they talk about others and so forth, it becomes abundantly clear right away what position that person's in. Whether they're fool number one, whether they actually have some advancement, or so forth. It's evident. And Prabhupada says in his purport to in the 17th chapter of the Gita, in regards to in the second chapter of the Gita, in regards to the speech, that a fool is undiscovered until he speaks. He had nothing to say, and then he said it. And so there's a way in which it's very important. So in the discussion of the advanced devotee, the verse given by Srila Ishvarapuri to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the most essential verse in the Bhagavatam, which you all know, right? Evam vratasva priyanama kirtya jatanu rago chita chuta uchar hasatyato rautiti roti gayati unmanavan rititi lokabhayaha. That as one makes this vow to chant the Hare Krishna mantra, then gradually he becomes attached to a particular name of Krishna, and then the heart begins to melt. And when the heart melts, then one becomes like a madman and doesn't care for outsiders. Sometimes he laughs, sings, cries, and things like that. Shows ecstatic symptoms. Then in the purport, the author has brought out the commentaries of various acharyas who talk about this verse, because it's so important. And one of them is Madhvacharya, and he mentions that there are different kinds of very advanced devotees whose hearts have melted. Some of them show external symptoms and others don't. But all advanced devotees always show two symptoms, and those are Mukhya Prasada. One is that only merciful things come from his or her mouth. That's what comes out, because that's what's in there. It's gonna come out eventually. And the other is steadiness, which you can't fake. You can fake a lot of things, but you can't fake steadiness. You're either there or you're not. You know, it's like you don't have to say anything if you show up. Everyone's going, all right, you're here. That proves it. You voted with your feet. You made it. You know? So it's not such a technical thing. It's something that we can feel, we can see from interacting with devotees who's advanced, and that takes place over time, and one has to see from these symptoms. One can see from the symptoms. Yes, who is next? Sudeep.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question from this purport. We read that Krishna is still striving to deliver all of us, and it's easy to understand in terms of devotees, but what about those? How do we understand how Krishna is trying to deliver even those who are not following the path? For instance, the Mayaya Partha those scientists and all who deride or who do not believe in Krishna, how do we understand that Krishna is still trying to deliver them?
Krishna is neutral. Samaham sarvabhuteshu nami dveshosti napriya. He doesn't interfere with the independence of the living entity, because he gives freedom in order that the living entity can reciprocate out of love. But he disseminates knowledge throughout the entire human society in the form of Srila Vyasadeva. He asks his devotees to go everywhere and teach about the Bhagavad Gita and so forth. And then within even the Varnashram system and the Karmakanda sections of the Vedas, there are ways in which one gradually can become elevated to higher positions. In other words, there's a system even for those in the lowest modes of material nature who follow the scriptures meant for them, like in the mode of ignorance. If you want to eat meat, okay, Krishna, the Shastra says, okay, you can do it. Just do it like this. Then if someone follows that, they get a little faith in the Shastra. And then that's a beginning. So there's always a stair step, a way someone can come up. Karmi bhya parito hare priyataya vyaktim yayur jnaninas tebhyo jnani vimukta bhakti parama premaika nishtastata tebhyasta pashupala pankaja drishasta byopi saradika preshta tadvad iyam tadiya sarasa naka nashayaka kriti. This is described in the Nectar of Instruction about the gradations of personalities. Karmi bhya. So first of all, there's the karmi, but in the purport, Prabhupada says even the karmi, that is one who's following the Shastra in order to elevate himself to heaven and so forth, is dear to Krishna. Why? He's following the Shastra, after all. From the point of view of pure devotional service, dharma projita kaitavo, traparamo, we kick out all this cheating, materially motivated thing. But as far as Krishna is concerned, it's a huge project to catch all living entities in the net so that they can gradually come up. And even in the sections you're talking about where there are shastras which are propagated by Lord Shiva on the order of Lord Krishna in order to bewilder the public and so forth. There's a plan behind that. They're entangled in one way, so sometimes, like if you get cancer, you got to take some poison in order to kill the cancer, right? You get some bacterial infection, you have to take antibiotics. What is that you're giving me, sir? Poison. The doctor's giving you poison, and you say, what are you giving me poison for? Well, you need it. So Lord Krishna, everyone says, why is he, allowing this Mayavad to come out? So one way or another, some medicine for the soul. So he's never inattentive. We just don't understand the bigger plan and see exactly how even the sufferings of the material world and so forth are meant as a reformatory. It's for the living entities, so that eventually there's an accumulative effect in the heart of the conditioned soul in the material world until, like Roberto Duran, fighting Tommy Hagler, said, no mas. That's it. I throw in the towel. I quit. I'm not fighting another round with this guy. He's beating the heck out of me, and I can't make it anymore. It's a nice feeling to take the towel and say, okay, I decide, no mas. I quit. Yes, Kanka. And then Shakalila.
Just a practical example of that to show Krishna's greatness is that even in this world, a parent will do whatever it can to give love to the child, even if the child is the most debauch or they're always there waiting and hoping and praying that that child will. And that's Krishna. He's there for everyone. And he's ready to give them the way. Like you said, we don't know the bigger picture. And the way for someone may be a different way for another person. And that's why we have to become so careful about not being judgmental. Because Krishna's there for everyone, and he's guiding them within the heart.
Really nice points. Very practical, using these analogies to see how a parent knows what's best to reform the child and so forth. And as far as not being judgmental, there's, I just read recently in the Bhagavatam a commentary in which it's mentioned, of course, in the Shastra that one shouldn't criticize or praise anyone because everything's going on perfectly. So what's the point? But of the two injunctions, it's okay to praise, just not criticize. And then the Acharyas say that one can criticize if somebody is preaching something that's deviating others from the path of pure devotional service. And they're presenting it in such a way that it disturbs their minds. Shruti Shmiti Paranadi Panchatriki Vidin Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhakti Rupatayaiva Kalpate. Rupa Goswami says that the process of devotional service that deviates from the Shruti, Smriti, Panchatriki Vidi and so forth is a disturbance to the whole Vaishnava society. And therefore, when you would notice Prabhupada criticizing others for this or that or the other thing, they are precision. It's done with precision in order to save others from making a mistake, from following a doctrine that might actually take them down the wrong path and so forth. I really like the analogy of the parents because it's something everyone can relate to. And, you know, Krishna is the supreme parent, so to speak, and is the well-wisher of everyone, is arranging things in such a way that they get the best they can. But if a child runs away from home and won't take the help, the guidance, the allowance, anything, I mean, kids do this all the time. They just say, that's enough. I'm not listening to you anymore. At a certain age, for some reason, they just decide, you know, that's it. Yes. And then what can the parents do if they won't take it? You know, sometimes from afar, they still send their, they'll still arrange. Like if I ran away from home, luckily I was able to run into the ashram in San Francisco. Could have gone anywhere. But I remember I went to India a couple of years later and I got malaria. And I had malaria and a couple other things, but that was enough. I got malaria, I landed in New York City, and they immediately rushed me to the hospital, and as soon as I got there, they did blood tests and said, you're quarantined, you can't leave the hospital. I thought, this is a fancy hospital, how am I going to pay for this? The next morning they said, oh, you have insurance. I thought, where did I get insurance? I talked to my parents, say, oh, we kept your insurance, your health insurance for you, even though I ran away, I bolted on them. But that's like Krishna too. He's always backing up the living entity, but the living entity wanted the divorce. That's the idea. And maybe somebody gets a divorce and then they say, I never want to hear from you again. I never want to see you. I never want to hear from you again. But the person's still a well-wisher, so he'll arrange to send checks and things like that without his name on it, whatever, so the other person gets it. And so Krishna's like that. He kind of is like, okay, you don't want anything to do with me? I'll still, here's all the facility and everything like that, but I'll just stay, I'll keep my name off it. I'll let you forget about me if you want to. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's the source of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness, and so forth. Who's next? Vishaka Leela, and then Sukeshwari. Go ahead.
Prabhu,
Hey, I wonder if your clock actually works up on that wall. It's been at 6:30 for the last half an hour. You just fixed it, eh? I was thinking, boy, I have all the time in the world here. I go, wow. Oh no, what a disaster. A clock that doesn't work. A non-violent policeman, a violent police, a violent priest, or a clock that doesn't run. But at least it's right twice a day, right? Okay. Okay, whose turn? Vishaka Leela and then Sukeshwari.
Prabhu, we were discussing about what compels someone to offer selfless service. I was thinking that unless there is deep faith, it's not possible to perform selfless service, because generally we need acknowledgement or credit because we have this insecurity that I may not be acknowledged or people may not recognize my service. But if there is a deep faith that Krishna will maintain me, Krishna will love me no matter what, then there is this, it becomes natural. Whatever we do becomes selfless. I just wanted to quote this a very wonderful pastime which we heard when we went for one of the South India yatras. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was, this was in Sri Rangam. So he was telling this story of Quresh, who's one of the very leading disciple of Ramanujacharya. And once when Quresh, because Ramanujacharya at that time was really spreading Sri Vaishnavism, and one of the Chola kings was very envious, so he wanted to use his power to make Ramanujacharya submit to him and say and proclaim that Mayavada philosophy is the highest philosophy. So instead of Ramanujacharya, Quresh goes on his behalf, and the king really compels him to sign an agreement saying that Mayavada philosophy is the highest. So he denies, and finally the Chola king asks his courtiers to punish him by piercing his eyes because he was not agreeing to whatever he proposed. So finally, he is blinded, and then when Ramanujacharya later comes to know about this, he tells him, after many years, he tells him, why don't you go to Lord Ranganath and pray that, he gives you his eyes back. Then he goes, because Ramanujacharya asks him to go, he goes, but instead of praying for his eyes, he actually prays to Ranganath, and Lord Ranganath appears before him, and he says, ask for a benediction. And Quresh says, instead of asking for his eyes, he says, I want you to forgive the people who actually poked my eyes. And then he says, okay. And then when he comes back, Ramanujacharya asks, what happened? Did you pray? He said, I prayed, but I prayed for, to forgive them. And then he says, no, go again and now, ask for this benediction. So he goes again, he prays, Lord Ranganath appears, and he asks, let the Chola king be forgiven, for whatever sinful act he performed. And then when he comes back, again Ramanujacharya asks, why are you not asking for your eyes? And he says, I don't need these eyes because I have a deep faith that my spiritual master is maintaining me and will protect me whether I have these eyes or not. And at that time, Ramanujacharya becomes very, very, very pleased with him, and he actually, appreciates his selflessness, that he has this deep faith that the spiritual master, will protect him no matter what. So I was just, relating to this pastime, and I was thinking that's so true, because if there is faith, then we wouldn't look for anything external.
Yeah, some really nice points that I liked what you said about how if one is relating to the body, the false ego, and has low self-esteem and so forth, there's always a need to get acknowledgement. The service is not selfless and so forth. But if one has this realization through deep faith that the only perfect thing is the service, that I'm not my body and so forth, there's nothing to make up for. In other words, the body is always in an imperfect state. And if I identify with it, then I'm always trying to make up for that some way or another. Through the false ego, I'm making arrangements. How do I look doing the service and so forth? How was I noticed and so forth? And then, we lose that. But if we have complete faith that Krishna is, I'm doing this for Krishna, for the spiritual master and so forth, then that tendency isn't even there. And also, another point from this is that how we can see in our own lives how impossible it is to reciprocate selfless service. If someone actually does selfless service for us, then we become overwhelmed. What can you give back? Everything seems paltry in comparison when someone really gives you something from their heart. If there's tit for tat, if there was something attached to it, it's very easy because, oh, let's pay them off. I'll just give them what they gave me, whatever it is. Okay, we're even now, even on a subtle level. But if there is absolutely nothing in return, it's done out of love, then it's overwhelming. And that's what Krishna says too, in the section I was mentioning from the Bhagavatam, that Krishna says that because your love is so pure, I can't reciprocate this. I'm overwhelmed by it. He becomes overwhelmed. Nice, thank you. Sukeshwari and then Jagarini.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I was just relating to what Kanka Mataji actually mentioned. When I first read Bhagavad Gita, I felt that Krishna is always telling, surrender unto me, and I'm the best, and you should just follow me. And, it took me many years to realize that, like how parents tell the kids that nobody in the world will be able to take care of you as well as me. And if the child thinks that, my mom or my dad are actually boasting about themselves, it's the ignorance of the child, that he doesn't understand or she doesn't understand that the mom or dad is actually telling the fact that nobody else in the whole universe will be able to take care of the child as well. So I was just thinking about that point. And I was also thinking about, Krishna, as you said, that sometimes parents, the kids don't want to listen to their parents and go away. But similarly, like Krishna, like how parents always see to it that they are taken care indirectly. And so similarly, Krishna is, as a Paramatma, always is staying with all the living entities. And it's just he's just waiting at that some point that my child will again look back at me and I'm going to take care of the child. So I always, think about that, that how merciful Krishna is. He doesn't need us, but we need him for everything. And, how unfortunate that God didn't want to be with him. Yeah. Thank you.
It's very apparent thank you, very nice points, that in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Gopakumar goes to Vaikuntha and meets Lord Narayan, the Lord says something to him very profound, which is that I've been waiting for you for many millions of lifetimes. And each lifetime I was watching, I was thinking, this is the lifetime that he'll actually come back to me. And he said, I couldn't wait any longer, so I had to intervene in your life. And he was so grateful to Gopal Kumar for coming back to Godhead. This was his mood, gratitude. The Lord was grateful to his servant for coming back. And he feels like that about every single soul. And I really like it. It's a very interesting point about how the parents seem like they're boasting, but actually they know what's best. This also comes up in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita when there's, and in other shastras. For instance, sometimes Radharani will become angry when Krishna goes off with somebody else. And it's not anger like in the material world because someone feels spite that they weren't chosen. But it's because she knows that when Krishna is with anyone else, he can't be completely satisfied. And all she cares about is his satisfaction. And therefore she's disturbed that he's with somebody else because he's not going to be able to be. So therefore it may seem like she's asserting herself, but just as the parents would say to the child that, you know, no one can take care of you as well as I, then, you know, this is actually on the spiritual platform. Jagarini.
I was just thinking about how it all kind of goes full circle back to the experience of selfless devotional service, because another thing that's quite tangible in performing devotional service, and that's not to say I've ever reached, again, that platform of selflessness, but besides the happiness, there's also these byproducts that happen. You can experience them anytime you do any service with the devotees. It's a lightheartedness that makes you affectionate, feel affection towards the devotees and appreciation towards the devotees. It fosters a kind of sublime mood of an interaction, with the devotees, and it comes from just doing the service. It doesn't take, as you make advancement in spiritual life and as devotees are more dedicated. But I know my granddaughter, when she comes to the temple, she says to me, Grandma, I want to go do that because it makes me happy to do it. Just on the very simplest level, there's that experience. And the byproducts of that happiness is the love you feel towards devotees, which automatically fosters the we were talking about criticism, and that kind of stuff usually comes from kind of grumpiness, from like an unhappiness. And in doing nice devotional service, a lot of times that just kind of goes away, without extra effort.
Don't be grumpy. Kanka, and then Shraddha.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment about how merciful Krishna is, that he came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially in the age of Kali, to give us this chanting of Hare Krishna, because none of us were coming home. And so to accelerate our coming home, he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the age of Kali.
Nice point. Shraddha.
I just wanted to make 2 points. A little while ago we were talking about when you do selfless service, then your capacity to do things also increases manifold. And I was just going to draw a parallel from what Kanka Mataji said, that again Prabhupada's example holds very true in that case, that he came here, it was completely selfless, came here to America, and see what he did in the next 10 years. Unimaginable thing that he did.
Before you make your second point, we were just at Google, and on the way out from doing the program there, Govindacharan Prabhu was telling me that at Google, they have a philosophy, an overarching philosophy, that it's better to think big projects, and they're actually easier to do a bigger project. And when you do them, then there's a way in which the carryover effect is much greater, and then you can do even bigger things. And your first point was? Yeah, Prabhupada. Yeah.
How your capacity to do things
How your
increases.
capacity increases. Right. And so there's a way in which, in devotional service, by thinking of doing, big devotional service, one is one's capacity increases. Anyway, I missed that point. Go ahead, do number 2. It'll come back to me.
So number 2 was about criticism, criticizing, and actually Mukharvinda, he follows Nindadi Shunya a lot in his life. And actually he had commented that, so I'm just repeating that. He said that you have to be very, very careful about criticizing, even criticizing your juniors and so-called people who are not that much advanced, because then you get into that habit, and then you will criticize your peers, and then you'll criticize your seniors, you'll criticize your spiritual master, and so on. And
Yeah, I noticed also in listening to criticism, it tends to take your ability to appreciate the person away. Like if you hear criticism of somebody, even if you don't agree with it, then later on it can come back to you, and then that appreciating capacity that you had for someone else can be diminished. So it's a very diminishing kind of energy, unnecessary criticism, or criticism that comes from envy. And now we're going to read one more purport, because Prabhupada gave us a plethora of purports to read from. And the next one is from 325:34. Maikatmatam me sprihayanti kechin matpada seva biratan madiha yenyon yato bhagavata prasajya sabhajayante mama paurushani. This is from the Glories of Devotional Service, spoken by Lord Kapiladev. A pure devotee who is attached to the activities of devotional service and who always engages in the service of my lotus feet never desires to become one with me. Such a devotee who is unflinchingly engaged always glorifies my pastimes and activities. Purport: there are 5 kinds of liberation stated in the scriptures. One is to become one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or to forsake one's individuality and merge into the Supreme Spirit. This is called ekatmatam. A devotee never accepts this kind of liberation. The other 4 liberations are to be promoted to the same planet as God, Vaikuntha, to associate personally with the Supreme Lord, to achieve the same opulence as the Lord, and to attain the same bodily features as the Supreme Lord. A pure devotee, as will be explained by Kapila Muni, does not aspire for any of the 5 liberations. He especially despises as hellish the idea of becoming one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Prabodhananda Saraswati, a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, said, Kaivalyam nanakayate. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme Lord, which is aspired for by the Mayavadis, is considered hellish. That oneness is not for pure devotees. There are many so-called devotees who think that in the conditioned state we may worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but that ultimately there is no personality. They say that since the Absolute Truth is impersonal, one can imagine a personal form of the impersonal Absolute Truth for the time being, but as soon as one becomes liberated, the worship stops. That is the theory put forward by the Mayavad philosophy. Actually, the impersonalists do not merge into the existence of the Supreme Person, but into his personal bodily luster, which is called the Brahmajyoti. Although that Brahmajyoti is not different from his personal body, that sort of oneness, merging into the bodily luster of the personality of Godhead, is not accepted by a pure devotee, because the devotees engage in greater pleasure than the so-called pleasure of merging into his existence. The greatest pleasure is to serve the Lord. Devotees are always thinking about how to serve Him. They are always designing ways and means to serve the Supreme Lord, even in the midst of the greatest obstacles of material existence. The Mayavadis accept the description of the pastimes of the Lord as stories, but actually they are not stories, they are historical facts. Pure devotees accept the narrations of the pastimes of the Lord not as stories, but as absolute truth. The words mama paurushani are very significant. Devotees are very much attached to glorifying the activities of the Lord, whereas the Mayavadis cannot even think of these activities. According to them, the Absolute Truth is impersonal. Without personal existence, how can there be any activity? The impersonalists take the activities mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and other Vedic literatures as fictitious stories. and therefore they interpret them most mischievously. To have no idea of the personality of God. They have no idea of the personality of God. What does it say there? Make a note. It's a typo. They unnecessarily poke their noses into the scripture and interpret it in a deceptive way, in order to mislead the innocent public. The activities of Mayavad philosophy are very dangerous to the public, and therefore Lord Chaitanya warned us never to hear from any Mayavadi about scripture. They will spoil the entire process, and the person hearing them will never be able to come to the path of devotional service to attain the highest perfection, or will be able to do so only after a very long time. It is clearly stated by Kapila Muni that bhakti activities or activities in devotional service are transcendental to mukti. This is called panchama purushartha. Generally, people engage in the activities of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and ultimately they work with an idea that they are going to become one with the Supreme Lord, mukti. But bhakti is transcendental to all these activities. The Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, begins by stating that all kinds of pretentious religiosity is completely eradicated from the Bhagavatam. Ritualistic activities for economic development and sense gratification, and after frustration in sense gratification, the desire to become one with the Supreme Lord, are all completely rejected in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is especially meant for the pure devotees, who always engage in Krishna consciousness, in the activities of the Lord, and always glorify these transcendental activities. Pure devotees worship the transcendental activities of the Lord in Vrindavan, Dwarka, and Mathura, as they are narrated in Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas. The Mayavadi philosophers completely reject them as stories, but actually they are great and worshipable subject matters, and thus are relishable only for devotees. That is a difference between Mayavadi and pure devotees. So we get an idea of the motivation in worship. I mean, somebody may look like they're offering some worship to a deity, and you say, oh, well, there's a devotion, but their motive is actually, I want to become the deity. And actually, the worship is going on for some time, and then the deity is thrown away because I've achieved my goal. And once, when Prabhupada was walking in Mayapur, he was holding the hand of one of his senior devotees coming down a hill. You know, in Mayapur, you have to walk down these little slopes, you know, in the fields and things like that sometimes. And so Prabhupada took his hand, and then when he came to the standing point, he threw his hand away. And the devotee was surprised. And then Prabhupada said, this is the Mayavad philosophy. They take the help for some time, and then they throw it away. And this is not pure devotion. And in fact, this idea is so detrimental to the cultivation of devotional service that's mentioned throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Bhagavatam and so forth, in any of the devotional scriptures, that hearing Mayavad, associating with Mayavad, are completely forbidden because it contaminates the consciousness of the devotee and can waylay a devotee's progress in devotional service or stop it completely. Sukeshri.
Does Kaivalyam actually mean impersonal liberation?
Does what?
Kaivalya.
Kaivalya.
Does it mean impersonal liberation only?
Yeah. Here it's being described as Kaivalya, this becoming one with the Lord, yeah.
Does it have another meaning like Brahman? Because
it has other meanings because it means one. So there's a way in which Kaivalya can also be used in different, from different meanings, that one becomes one with the desire of the Lord and so forth. But here it's strictly being used in the discussion of Mayavad, this idea of Kaivalya.
Okay, yeah. And mukti actually means, because here it looked like mukti is only impersonal.
No, Lord Chaitanya refuted that argument because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gave that idea when he became transformed into a pure devotee. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then, several days later, soon afterwards, he came up to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and said, I want to change the Bhagavatam. And Mahaprabhu said, you can't change the Bhagavatam. What's the matter? And he quoted this verse from the 14th chapter of the 10th canto, in which Lord Brahma is talking about the attitude of a pure devotee. And there he says muktipade, and he talks about how the devotee is interested in serving the Lord and so forth. But Sarvabhauma didn't like the word mukti. He said this normally is in this context of this impersonal liberation, so I want to make it bhaktipade. And so, but Lord Chaitanya said, no, but it's referring to the Lord's lotus feet as the abode of all, liberation by taking shelter of his lotus feet, and the devotees are completely satisfied and so forth. So it depends on the context. The Lord is Mukunda. So we have Kanka and then Dayanidhi Prabhu.
The world is filled with voidism and impersonalism, and that's in our prayer that we offer to Srila Prabhupada. So everywhere we go, especially I'm sure in the workplace, for everyone, there's always these challenges of being around different people who think that what we're doing is imagination, or that it's just a joke, and they can't in any way understand how we can be devoted to this path of bhakti. So it's very challenging, but at the same time I feel like if you constantly hear these purports and you get that special mercy from your Gurudev, that you'll remain strong in whatever situation you're in.
Nice point. I was just in my book writing about how Daru Brahma had received a Bhagavatam before she was a devotee, and then about a year later she started reading it and became convinced of the path of bhakti, and then she was working somewhere, and at work one of the women co-workers was a Mayavadi. I started preaching Mayavad philosophy to her, and she was able to defeat her, she said, because she had been reading the Bhagavatam. She said, oh, that's not right. I'll tell you what the real thing is, And in the introduction to the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada mentions that one who reads the Bhagavatam will become fortified enough so that he can defend him or herself against the onslaught of atheists and Mayavadis and so forth. Nice. Dayanidhi Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhu, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, our goal is Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan. So in this beginning of the purport, I was talking about the different liberations in Vaikuntha. So who is making it to Vaikuntha? Who is desiring to go to Vaikuntha? Prabhupada always talks about Vaikuntha as being a place of no anxiety. It is the spiritual world, but at the same time, it doesn't seem to be our goal. I'm not talking about merging, but I'm talking about having the same bodily feature or whatever. Isn't there also servants there? I mean, is it just Dasya Ras and...
Dasya.
Dasya Ras is the only Rasa in Vaikuntha? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and who wants to go there? The Vaikuntha Wallas. They're interested in Vaikuntha. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya traveling South India meets Vyankata Bhatta. And there's a long discussion. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sort of good-naturedly, in a humorous way, he's challenging him. He says, so, how come Lakshmi Ji wants to join the rasa dance? She gave up worshipping Lord Narayan to, devote herself to Lord Krishna so she could get into the rasa dance. What's that all about? And so forth. And there was a back and forth kind of, Vyankata Bhatta appreciated, but you can see that there are many. When it comes to Lord Narayan and Vaikuntha and the Purusha Sukta and all these things, they're like, they have some bhav for it. And then the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they're very much enamored of the sweetness of Vrindavan. It's how it comes from, devotional service comes from one's previous association. Rupa Goswami Prabhupada says this in the Nectar Devotion. He's quoting, of course, Rupa Goswami, and he says, where does the devotional service, one's inclination for devotional service coming from? He said it's because of association, previous lives, performed devotional service and so forth. And one gets a certain kind of adhikari, inclination for serving a certain way, and there's also there's a way in which Krishna is predisposed in his relationship with the living entity, and there's a confluence of these things, and one is pulled in a certain direction by Krishna. And it's not that people in Vaikuntha are, why do we get stuck here? Unless they were meant to go to Goloka, like Gopakumar, and that's one of the points of the story. He ends up in Vaikuntha, and there he sees Narayan, but he's thinking like, here's Gopal. Hey, Gopal! And it was like, hey, we don't do that, stay back there. No, Prashukta, And Lord Narayan can barely keep his four arms because he keeps manifesting a flute because of the intense love of Gopakumar and so forth. And after a while, Gopakumar's feeling a little out of place there. So Narada Muni comes up to him and goes, come over here, let me tell you something. So you're really fortunate, do you have another place? And then he takes him, he actually goes to Dwarka, and then, he's in all the, pardon? He goes to Ayodhya, he goes to Dwarka, and finally Narada says, I've taught as much as I could to you, let me introduce you to Uddhava. Because Uddhava knows what are the mellows of Vrindavan. And he went there on Krishna's behest because Krishna, he was so intimate to Krishna, and he was the best devotee and everything like that. But Krishna knew what he was doing. He said, take a note to the gopis. So Uddhava goes to Vrindavan to deliver this note to the gopis who are almost dead out of separation from Lord Krishna. When he gets there, he saw, oh, I'm nothing. If I could become a blade of grass here and the dust from the feet of these devotees could land on my head, then I would feel myself fortunate. So he knew what the inside was. That's why when Krishna left the world, he sent Uddhava up to Badarik Ashram to teach this kind of devotional service to the sages that were there on the planet still, and so forth. And so Narada introduces him to Uddhava, and Uddhava begins to teach him about what is his real position in devotional service. So there's a way that we're guided forward in our, to our eternal position in the spiritual world. You can see that from Brihat Bhagavatamrita. And also by taking the holy name. Eventually, Gopakumar is given the instruction that he should go back to Vraj, Gokula Vrindavan, and perform Sankirtan. And when he does that, finally, the airplane from Goloka comes and picks him up and takes him back to Goloka Vrindavan. Anyway, there's a lot in there. Go ahead, Daini.
So then in Vrindavan, then, like the blades of grass, is that not Shantaras? Is that...
Yeah.
Is that higher rasa than the dasa rasa in Vaikuntha?
Well, these are not considered by high or low necessarily, because they're absolute. All the different rasas are absolute because they're all in loving service to Krishna. Only from like an overall perspective does one see what the various qualities are. But you can't just have Madhurya Ras, because all the other mixture of rasas is what creates the ultimate sweetness of the rasa. You see? So, it's the variety that makes it. So you can't just have, only one. And also, it's very clear from Sanatana Goswami's teachings of the Brihat Bhagavatamrita that the devotees in any rasa are completely satisfied. It's not that they want to trade it in. I mean, there's a couple instances of this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Murari Gupta, and then Balaba, Sri Balaba, the brother of Rupa and Sanatan. And they initiated him into the Krishna mantra. They said, Krishna's the sweetest. You better take this, you know. Mahaprabhu was giving it out and everything like that. And he tried, and all night long he cried. And he came back, he said, you know, I can't do it. I sold my head to the feet of Lord Raghunath, and that's just who I am, you know. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glorified him and Murari Gupta, who is the same.
Okay, just on another subject, I wanted to say something about selfless service.
Yes.
And how it's recognized, or how inconceivably it's recognized. My dear godbrother Atmaram, when he came and stayed with me when Srila Puri Maharaj came 11 years ago to my house and did programs here in San Jose.
That was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so he had come up from Mexico, and I was working full time, so Atmaram was planting some flowers in my yard and was cleaning up and doing so much stuff, you know, that there's no way Srila Puri Maharaj could have known this. So one time, actually it was at Akurna's house, we were in his room, and we were speaking to him, and he looked up and he said a couple things very kind to me, and then he said to Atmaram, he goes, Atmaram, he goes, the silent worker. He said, Atmaram, the silent worker. You know, it's like, how did he know this? You know, so it was very much appreciated that he was doing all this work behind the scenes, and he knew it, but he couldn't have known it, you know, physically.
Nice, nice. The silent worker. Let's see what the time is. We have just a couple of minutes. I didn't even want to. Okay, Sri Krishna Purushottam. So you haven't gotten in yet.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I was thinking the Mayavadis, even they are scared to read Srila Prabhupada books, because yesterday I went to one of the managers in Genentech, my company.
Yeah.
So to meet him and was to ask some questions about my subject, and he said, okay, this is all right, you have a few minutes to talk. I said, yeah, of course. Then he closed the door, and I had something wrong. Then he asked, you have a strict diet, and you wearing neck beads, and you follow some religious things. Yes, I follow ISKCON, and I explained him. Then I was thinking, no, you're talking my language. So it ended up for 45 minutes, and he was mentioning that Prabhupada books, I used to have Bhagavatam set with me, but the words are very high for me, like transcendental, and I cannot digest that many big words. But he used to go for Chinmaya mission, and then he was explaining about that, and I am explaining about ISKCON. So finally he said, okay, I told about you that we have a teacher here from 30 years he's following. Okay, why can't you invite him to our center one time? So he said,
Genentech?
Yeah.
We're going to Genentech.
So he was very appreciative for that.
Do they have free stuff? Because Google's got free stuff.
No free stuff. Free medicines.
Free medicines, okay. We're giving free medicines. I really like this. Everywhere SKP goes, he just preaches. And this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. You know, everywhere you go, everyone you meet. And Prabhupada told Dayananda Prabhu and his wife, Nandarani, that if you just try wherever you go to teach people about Krishna consciousness, appropriately, you don't want to, like, you know, you want to be appropriate wherever you go to introduce people or engage them as far as possible. If you do that, he said, you'll get superior strength and knowledge in Krishna consciousness. And this is the sum and substance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching. He said, Yadi Dako Tahi Kaha Krishnupadesha Maragnaya Guru Hanatare Desh. Everyone should take this role and try to teach everyone about the process of Krishna consciousness and teach them to chant Hare Krishna and understand the philosophy like this. And by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, it will come out successful. We just read this morning about how Vittal Prabhu distributed a set of books. A set of Bhagavatam went to a car through the window. Is that true? He passed it through the window to the other car while they were still going. And these kinds of things happen by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If that can happen, anything can happen. So tonight we talked about the glories of selfless service, and now we can exert ourselves in that direction and see what happens. No harm, right? Thank you very much. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripasinabhevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai.